So under a recent video, someone commented that what seems kind of unusual about me for being, I guess in this sphere, just an online internet commentator about politics in general, is I don't seem to have any real contempt for the average person. And that's a very kind thing to say, and I actually do appreciate that. But I think something I try to do is, I'm sorry if I've ever given the impression that I'm like a real man of the people, in the sense of coming from a working class background or like the poorest level of society or something. I come from an upper middle class family. When I'm employed, I work as a white collar professional. I'll soon have a post-secondary graduate degree. I don't really want to work in manual labor or a skilled trade or something. I'm a urban bourgeoisie. Now, granted, the economic standing of that is much, much lower than it would have been decades ago as our employment prospects. But the point is, I'm not at all from what you generally consider to be the typical man of the people sort of background. And ironically, back in the day when I used to be left-winged, I used to be way, way more elitist and way, way more contempt for the average person. Because I just saw them as crude. They didn't understand the big issues. They didn't understand like social justice and war and all these other like gay rights and feminism and all these causes du jour. I'm just like, these stupid, ignorant farmers living on their plots of land, voting conservative. They're just out there focused on their farms. They should be doing other stuff. They should be reading Noam Chomsky and, I don't know, critical race theory or whatever. Obviously, I'm exaggerating. I didn't really go that far, but you get what I mean. A lot of people take that perspective, that they have open contempt for the average person in your society. Because the average person in your society, generally speaking, isn't nearly as engaged in these meta-political issues as the elites will be. And you'll see this with a lot of politicians. Like Justin Trudeau has very open contempt for the average Canadian. Obama coined the term bitter clingers. I forget who it was who did NASCAR retards, but they have specific terms or attitudes that see the average person as being this inferior hillbilly who disgusts them and barely deserves to live on this planet. Who doesn't go to the same coffee parties they do, who doesn't read the same books that they do, who doesn't listen to the same music they do, and so they just view them as being scum. And to a certain extent, I used to have that perspective. But when I started to become more, I don't know if you want to say conservative or whatever, integralist or Christian, my perspective kind of changed. And I kind of just realized that people are different. People are different. And to have a healthy society, you need all kinds of different people. They are integral to each other. They work as part of an organic whole. You need white-collar people, you need bureaucrats, you need scientists, you need engineers, but you also need mechanics, people to do things like garbage, farm, construction, and all of these people are important to society. And all these people, by the nature of how much money they make or the work culture they're from or from their background, are going to be different. They're going to like different things. There's going to be quite a bit of overlap, particularly within the same country. Like Breaking Bad was a big show among like everybody, and some other things are big among different classes, but there's going to be these differences between them. A lot of, well, the stereotype at least is a lot of working class people, they like their beer and their football and their tailgating and their barbecues and stuff like that. And that's not necessarily the kind of thing that upper middle or upper class people do, at least in the same way. They might drink more wine and, I don't know, watch art films or whatever the stereotype is, but there are these differences in terms of how they live their lives, what they aspire to, what kind of stuff they're interested in, that sort of thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. So long as obviously it's moral and it's in line with God's law and stuff like that. If someone likes sports ball more, or someone likes art films more, that's not really a big issue. It's not a fundamental social issue in the way left makes it out to be. So once again, I'm not like a working class guy. I wouldn't want to really live in a trailer park or something like that. But these people are important to society. If you're going to be a nationalist, these people are part of your nation. The dude who fixes your car is as much a part of your nation as the guy who does your taxes. They're both important for society to function, and they deserve a basic amount of respect because of that, even if they are different in some classist sort of ways. And this kind of gets into part of where that comes from. So one of the reasons I think right-wing people, at least in the modern era, have such trouble winning on any political issue is that, generally speaking, conservatives are focused on what they're supposed to be focused on. If you think about the average conservative in America, what is the stereotype? He has like 3 to 5 kids. He goes to church every week. He has a job that he works long hours at. He's involved in his community. Conservatives are, to a greater degree, I think, interested in stuff like their religion, their family, and their job. And after that, maybe their community. And honestly, that's what they're supposed to do. And society's best if people focus on stuff like that. And they're resented and they're hated because they're focused on stuff like that, rather than these meta political issues or these things going on in the other side of the world. And this is why I think democracy is such an abusive and evil form of government. Because I think it asks way too much of the average person. It asks them to take part in something they aren't temperamentally or intellectually geared towards, that they shouldn't be intellectually or temperamentally geared towards, and it detracts them from doing like things that are actually productive to society. So I mean, if we look at what the intelligentsia and the news and everything want us to, the average person to know, they want them to know about critical race theory, about gender, about the history of colonialism, to read through all these like really nuanced policy positions about the Middle East, about taxes, about spending, about all this garbage. And the only like hard way they have to participate is to vote. So they have to spend an inordinate amount of time, and they're only asked to contribute once every like 4 years. And if their party doesn't win, then their vote's completely wasted. And the party who they vote for doesn't really represent, generally speaking, their actual views on most of these topics. And even if they claim to, in practice, they don't carry it out. And even if they do carry it out, it'll be overridden by a bureaucrat. And if it's not overridden by a bureaucrat, it'll be overridden by the Supreme Court. So like the example I would say is, like, let's say there's a town that's 80% goes to church 80% every week. It's maybe, I don't know, like 50% Catholic. And the Catholic and Protestant churches get together and they're like, look, Christ is king. We want to put up a crucifix, like a big statue in the middle of town, maybe a statue of the Virgin Mary or something. And like 80 to 90% of the population signs on to that. And then because of the way we have shit set up, you'll get the one atheist or the one other group member in the town who will sue, and it'll go to the Supreme Court and they'll tear it down. So why I even bring that up is you have this like supposed system based on popular sovereignty, based on popular will, that people need to get involved in and people need to be an activist in. But it's irrelevant, because even if you do achieve what you set out to do, it's just going to be overridden by the Supreme Court anyways. So it's abusive. It's I think really insidious and abusive and unfair that you tell people they have to be like read daily newspapers, understand all this really complex shit, ultimately they vote, and most of the time their vote is wasted, and then the party they vote for doesn't do what they say they're going to do, and then even if they do, it gets struck down by the Critarchy. And this is what's expected of these people. And we will say, like, oh, people need to get involved, people need to be active. And we're just telling them, waste your fucking time. Like, the time you have to spend with your family, or to work a couple extra hours to get that new car, or something like that, or maybe read a history book or something more, I forget the term, enlightening, or something to that effect. Don't do that. Read this fucking shit that doesn't even matter. And we put that onus on the person, and if something goes wrong, we blame the person for that. We say, oh, they voted for Bush, they voted for Obama, it's the people's fault. Well, it's not their fault, because they don't even really participate in the system. It's just abusive. It's they should be focusing on something else. And this is also part of the reason, going back to what I said earlier, why conservatives lose. Because a lot of them just want to work for a living, and they don't want to be professional activists. They don't want to be the rent-a-mob and go around and burn shit down because they have to be at work on Monday, or they have to drive their kid to soccer practice. And you may think that that's cringy or short-sighted or whatever, but let's think about this for a minute. What's of more societal value for the average person? I'm not talking about like technocrats or bureaucrats or people who actually need to understand these things, but reading some like policy paper about whether America should withdraw from Afghanistan, or playing catch with your kid. And I think the latter is of objectively a lot more social importance. What's better, going to mass or going to confession, or if you're Protestant, just going to church or reading the Bible or praying, or I don't know, writing to your Democratic congressman that abortion's bad, which will just go into the circular file and they won't even read. I mean, I think that the former is more important. And so it's just this really abusive, I think, evil system that forces participation from people who have more important things to do and more fulfilling things to do, and makes politics and these meta-political issues the ultimate goal in society, rather than self-improvement, the improvement of your family and your community. That's just kind of the way it goes. And don't get me wrong, I'm not shitting on, obviously you've seen this channel, I'm not shitting on, like, people like to watch movies or read history books or something, but they should be doing that for their own edification, or to help their career, or just because it's something they enjoy. And they feel it kind of develops them intellectually and spiritually and in terms of personality, not for this stupid partaking in a worthless process that doesn't impact anything. So I hope that kind of gives my perspective. My perspective is, so long as people are contributing members of society who hold to the same basic Christian moral values that I do, things like the sacredness of marriage, that sort of thing, the sanctity of life, those sorts of things, and that their lifestyles don't inherently go against that, then they're part of my nation, they're part of my society, they're productive. And I don't require them to be these super intellectuals. If anything, like I said, they should be doing something else with their time. Watching the football game and drinking a beer is better than these people trying to figure this shit out. Because in a lot of cases, even people like in these circles, people in like the top 95th percentile of understanding it still don't really know what the hell's going on. Like, no one knew what the hell was going on in the post-election period. So how is the average person supposed to even deal with this? So that's kind of my attitude on it. I hope you found that interesting. I hope that made sense. God bless. Christ is King, and I'll talk to you guys later.